Hey friends, so I've been planning another Meghan Markle video for a while because there is so much happening in that world, but I've been distracted with something else that my regular viewers don't know what I'm talking about. Anyone new watching? Hello, welcome, thank you. All right, so Meghan Markle has come back on Instagram after dramatically announcing it to the cut like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was really weird how she did it too. She was like, I'm getting back on Instagram. And then waited for a big reaction. Yeah, she's like, I have a lot to say until I don't. Do you like that? It was so weird. So weird. There were a lot of really interesting gems in that Vanity Fair article, and we're going to cover some of them. But first, I wanted to show you something that I just can't unsee. This is probably one of the weirdest comparisons ever on the internet, but I can't unsee it. So Meghan Markle come back to Instagram, and she did that running on the beach deal, and then the next was her Billie Eilish video, and now one announcing her new name. Let's take a look real quick.
Oh my god. American Riviera, that sounds like such a great name. It's my neighborhood, it's a nickname for Santa Barbara, but it limited me to things that were just manufactured and grown in this area.
So it feels like every time that she comes on social media with a video, she is trying to look very downplayed, very relatable, very jeans, mommy, not a lot of ostentatious makeup, things like that. And there's almost an air of trepidation, it feels like she knows that the world hates her and that she's severely messed up and that she's trying to be very cautious and downplayed with how she comes back. It brought something to mind to me. Let me show y'all.
However, one of my best friends texted me a couple days ago and she said, hey, the tickets to Taylor Swift in Paris are really cheap right now, look. And they were like $200 compared to the thousands of dollars they've been everywhere else that I've looked.
Y'all recognize her? That is Colleen Ballinger, formerly known as Miranda Sings, who made an absolute fool out of herself on YouTube doing her Miranda Sings character, but she got a Netflix deal with it and made a ton of money before there was a scandal where we found out that she allegedly was children while she was that character, Miranda Sings. That scandal brought on the infamous ukulele apology, the toxic gossip train, and then she came back to YouTube to reinvent herself about 9 months ago as a mommy vlogger. And since then, we saw that style of video, the very naturey, not a lot of ostentatious makeup, very plain clothes, look at me, I'm relatable. I don't have enough money for the expensive Taylor Swift concert. And I think that's part of what brought it to mind whenever Meghan Markle first did that Billie Eilish thing. It's like, you are married to Princess Diana's son. You can get in contact with stars and you can afford to do whatever for them.
The toxic gossip train.
Now, I don't want anyone to misunderstand and think that I'm equating Colleen and Meghan Markle's actions. I'm really not. What I'm equating is their comeback air, their comeback energy. The comeback to social media feels the same. So even though people have been suspecting for a really long time that American Riviera Orchard just wasn't going to work out, I mean, they've had several copyright infringement claims filed against them. I might not have used the right term there, but y'all know what I mean. Sorry. Meghan doesn't mention that issue, though. She only talks about the other issue, which a lot of newspapers have pointed out as well, that by using that name, it was limited to things that were produced there. Now, you'd think that would be what she wanted. A luxury goods brand is usually defined by the exclusivity of how it's made. I mean, the stuff that comes from the royal estates, the jam, the honey, etc., it has to be produced on the royal estates to be able to have that label. Now, personally, I think As Ever is a pretty stupid name to be given to a lifestyle brand because Meghan Markle says that she wants to show people how to elevate things in everyday life as part of her lifestyle brand. Well, how are you elevating it if it's As Ever? The concepts don't gel to me. But what the name As Ever does work for is this vintage clothing company from New York City that already has that name. Now, just like whenever she announced American Riviera Orchard, it seems like she did no research, no simple Googling to see if there was a problem with that or already another brand out there. As ever, NYC has done an interview with the New York Post saying that they don't know what they're going to do, that they hate it, that their brand's being infringed upon, but they don't have the Netflix money and team of lawyers behind them to try and do something about it. This reminds me of whenever Megan said that she didn't Google Harry. And it's like, well, if you would have seen him in an NAZI uniform. And then you might have known something about what you were getting into. Now, Meghan and Harry have lawyers around them, and it makes me wonder, did Meghan ignore advice on American Riviera Orchard and on As Ever, or were they too afraid to give it to her because of all the reports that we have of how Meghan treats staff? It's not just British tabloids at this point. Vanity Fair confirmed it with a lot of former Archewell staffers. Another interesting thing about the As Ever rebrand compared to the Spotify deal that Vanity Fair confirmed is that Spotify totally expected that because Meghan and Harry had this Archewell Productions, Archewell Audio, whatever, that they were going to just produce the podcast for Spotify. And it just never happened. Nothing was ever coming. And so eventually Spotify had to send a studio and a team to get that archetypes thing out there. We just heard Meghan say in the video earlier that part of her As Ever rebrand happened after Netflix decided to partner with her on that too. I can only surmise that Netflix expected that she would have American Riviera Orchard up and running by the time the show was ready to go, but she was still, flopping around with trademark problems, and they had to just step in, force her to change it, and get it going, is what my opinion is. What do y'all think? Another issue that's happening where it's just like, girl, you need to Google, is that there's a small Spanish town saying that her logo appears to be a basic copy of theirs. Now, it's not an exact copy. It has the same elements of the palm tree and the hummingbirds. But yeah, I can see why they're like, oh my God. They don't, I think, have the money to actually do anything about it unless, they happen to get support from people. But it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. But it's just another example of research is not a sin. Check things out. Another thing that hit me as wild is that Meghan has always been so particular about telling everyone that she's never going to allow her children to be commercialized, and they will never be commercialized, and not allowing the normal traditional royal family children photos, all that stuff. But now that she's in a bit of a spiral, having to do a brand relaunch and everything to try and keep her Netflix deal going, here she is putting out a photo of her child on her new website for the brand relaunch. It hit me as a little distasteful, and people are allowed to change their minds on things, but I don't know. What do y'all think? At the end of the day, Meghan and Harry just keep being their own worst enemies all the time. If you weren't following them back then, you may not remember, but whenever they were still in the royal family, the British tabloid coverage wasn't that bad. There were a little bit of talk about the bridesmaid dresses, and Kate made Kate cry, or Kate made Meghan cry. It went back and forth. It was just clear that there was something about the bridesmaid dresses and somebody cried. There was a story that came out, and I can't find it, that Kate took Meghan flowers and Meghan didn't want them or something like that. And I personally at the time thought it was all nonsense. I'm like, oh, ha ha ha, they're probably having tea together laughing at all this ridiculous rumors. But when the coverage really, really turned was after Meghan and Harry had just given this big environmental lecture about, carbon footprint and not using private jets, carbon emissions, blah, blah, blah. And then they take off on a private jet somewhere. And when they get questioned about it, they give this very looking down their nose, you don't understand the royal security we need kind of thing. Basically rules for thee and not for me. And it did not go over well with anybody, because as privileged and taken care of as she was, Queen Elizabeth II tried very hard to put herself with the people when she could without losing the royal mystique. So doing all that lecturing and then turning around and being like, oh, well, it's not hypocrisy because I'm royal and I need it kind of thing is actually what really turned the coverage against them. People didn't feel like Harry would be like that before Meghan. Now, like I said before, whenever the tabloids very first started in with the somebody made somebody cry over bridesmaids and flowers and all that stuff, I thought it was nonsense. I thought that they were just trying to create some drama because no drama was happening. But I was really, really shocked then whenever I watched the Oprah interview. And Meghan gets up there and says that the bridesmaids' dresses was the start of a big problem. It was a big deal. I was just like, oh my God, for freaking real? You had that kind of platform to work your way into an understanding of how to best work within it and do good. And you're out here having a meltdown over bridesmaids' dresses and spatting with the Princess of Wales. What on earth? Like I said in my last Meghan Markle video, I know everybody likes to down Suits and say that, nobody watched it and everything. I actually did. I was a fan, y'all. I loved Suits. And so whenever Harry and Meghan first started dating, I was all excited. I thought that we were going to be redeemed from Wallace Warfield Simpson within the royal family. Boy, was I wrong. I'd never thought that Harry was the super brightest bulb in the box or anything, but whenever Spare came out and I listened to it, the animosity towards William, both petty and real, actually shocked me. The alarming baldness, much more advanced than my own. What on earth, Harry, for real? And that his baldness is advancing, y'all. It's advancing. Regardless of how much they want to Photoshop his cover shoots. Going back to the brand relaunch and rename, it's really strange to me. I mean, the show's name is With Love, Meghan. So you would think if Netflix is going to be sponsoring both the show and the company, that the natural name for the line would be With Love instead of As Ever. Now, I did Google real quick, and there is a clothing company out there named With Love, but that didn't stop them in the case of As Ever. So I don't know. What do y'all think? Now, I rip on Meghan for a lot of petty things, like always wearing beige, her inconsistencies, getting her personality from Suits. But the next thing that I'm about to show you actually legit shocked me because there's just no excuse for her not knowing that you do not move a wheelchair user's wheelchair without their permission. My God, first off, if you're going to be representing something like the Invictus Games, which is all about disabled people, you need to be educated on the disabled community. Second off, this isn't obscure information. All you have to do to know that you should never move a wheelchair user's wheelchair without their permission is watch Wicked. That's what set off Elphaba. Now, y'all let me know in the comments, am I reading into it too much here, or did Harry look kind of panicked and run? I mean, we couldn't see his face, obviously, but his movements almost looked panicked when he saw her do that, and he was rushing towards her. Now, it seems to me like maybe he wanted to stop her, but that could have also been him just trying to get into the picture. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments, y'all.